Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. I hope your morning was engaging and connecting. I'm Aisha Hauser, pronoun she, her, and I have the privilege and honor of serving as your Laredo Board President. Before I introduce the nominating committee, I wanted to touch on some feedback we got from the community relations team. There was some feedback that the credentialing program that Gaia and Gail spoke about was some folks were left with kind of a negative impression after yesterday's presentation. So I wanted to kind of close that circle a little bit, not close it, but offer a perspective. Being credentialed myself, I have associate, credential, and master level, to say that the credentialing program is important. And we have heard feedback that there have been folks who want to be credentialed or who took a long time to get credentialed because of challenges in their congregations. And I want to invite you, if you are one of the people that are excited about credentialing and want to be credentialed, and either your board or the minister you're working with somehow doesn't support you, please let us know. Because part of that is we are an association of congregations, and that we hold each other accountable. So the UUA and Laredo have worked for years to bring this credentialing program to fruition. And if there are barriers, we need to work toward getting rid of those barriers and mitigating them, whether it's financial support, whether it's making sure there's support from the congregation. I do want to say a word about why I genuinely support and feel credentialing is important, not just as Laredo president, but also as someone who discerned for years, should I go to seminary? Should I stay a lay leader? What credentialing offers is a way to solidify and reflect on who we are as faith development leaders, as professionals. And the portfolio itself, I was surprised at how much I got out of just writing it and putting together what I've done in my profession, whether it's within Unitarian Universalism or not, and how they empower who I am as a religious educator and how I live out my faith. So the credentialing program to me isn't simply a way, to get letters after your name. It's a way to genuinely discern and think about who and how we are as religious educators in Unitarian Universalism and in the world. And it's not perfect, and nothing is. And if you have barriers, please, please, please let the good offices know. Jude Geiger, who that is his portfolio on the Laredo board. Let your chapter know. Kirsten Hunter, that is her portfolio on the Laredo board. Let any Laredo board members. Let Sarah Getty McNeil, who holds the credentialing. Forgive me, Sarah Getty, I do not know your exact title. I do know it, and it's escaping my COVID brain right now. And so Sarah Getty, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm the Professional Development Programs Manager at the UUA. So I would just name too that if it appears that there are barriers, talk to me, because oftentimes I can help find ways to overcome those barriers, or I'm willing to talk to people for you. One of the I guess, as far as like being minister to minister, one of the benefits is I'm a minister. So I'm willing to talk to your minister and have a hard conversation about why they need to invest in you as a religious educator in this way. So feel free to reach out.
Thank you. And the word isn't criticism, the feedback that I've heard about the tension of becoming credentialed is that congregations will not want to pay a credentialed religious educator what the recommendation is. And that is yet another barrier that we need to address as an association, rather than, to me, what I'm naming is, the answer isn't avoid credentialing. The answer is, let's work to make this better and more equitable and more inclusive. So with that, thank you all. I imagine, Sarah Getty, that at some point you will be offering time to speak with you later after fall conference. This is not happening during fall conference, to find out more about the credentialing program. So I am going to introduce the nominating committee, and who is actually, apologies, I don't know who's speaking first on the nominating committee. Is it,
it's me.
Great, Jermaine Craig, I'm handing it over.
Thanks, Aisha. Hello, we are the nominating committee, NomCom, and we're here to talk to you for the next 15 minutes or so about what we do and the opportunities that all of you have to both serve our faith and to do important work alongside some of the amazing folks that we've all been hanging out with and hearing from this week. My name is Jermaine Kripe. I serve as the children's coordinator at Beacon Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Summit, New Jersey, and I am in my 4th year of serving on the committee. I'm also the committee chair, and I'd love it if the other members of the team that are present could unmute themselves and introduce themselves.
Hey everyone, I'm Sam. I'm the Director of Youth Ministries at Winchester Unitarian Society, and this is my 2nd year on the nominating committee.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mary Kroner Ekstrand. I serve as Director of Religious Education at the UU Congregation at Willamette Falls in Oregon City, Oregon. And this is my 1st year on the nominating committee.
Hi, I'm Emmy Schlobaum, and I am currently unaffiliated with a congregation, but I am a proud member of the Church of the Larger Fellowship. Thank you very much. And this is also my 1st year on the nominating committee.
We have a 5th member, Ty Resendiz, who's unfortunately navigating our new normal by homeschooling 2 kids and working full-time from home with spotty Wi-Fi. So she sends her regrets for missing today, but she hopes that everyone is enjoying this time together. Mary?
So here's how this is going to go. Since Emmy and I are pretty new, we thought we would interview the returning members of the nominating committee so that all of you out there can hear a little bit more about how the process works for filling leadership positions in our professional organization, Loretta, including the nominating committee itself. Emmy, you go first.
So Sam, you get to go first. Can you give us an overview of what the non-com does and tell us why you like being on this committee?
I can, yes. So in short, we choose candidates for open positions on the board, and then we submit our slate that is voted on by Loretta members each June. We also fill vacancies for the various committees of the board. So part of our role is encouraging people to apply for all these different things. And then the other part is sorting through the applications and figuring out who makes the most sense where. I really love being on this committee for many reasons, but the biggest one that pops out to me is because of its ability and our ability kind of to shift between reverence and irreverence. We can be a bit silly sometimes, but we also really share, fierce love of the important mission of Loretta, of, like the holy work of emboldening new leaders to emerge, actively centering voices that have been decentered or lost, and really working hard to empower folks whose identities have kept them on the margins for far too long in our faith and its institutions. So I think we all recognize that this work is sacred and very serious, and we have a lot of fun doing it.
I'm new to the committee, but I can vouch for the fun. I'm already having fun. Jermaine, can you please tell us a little bit more about the positions we're trying to fill currently and a little bit more about our timeline and process for that work this year?
Sure. Board positions open up in cycles, and in December, we'll be looking for applications for 2 opening positions on the board, our vice president and the person who holds the leadership development portfolio, as well as open positions on 2 of our committees, the Committee on Mentoring, which oversees Loretta's full mentoring program, and our committee, Nominating. Unfortunately, this is my last year, as well as Ty's. So in the coming months, you'll be hearing from us about how to apply for these openings for our organization's leadership, and the applications will begin in January. We'll send out reminders to people who've shown interest, either through the Q&A session we'll talk about at the end of this presentation, or for people that have filled out our awesomeness inventory or our brag page. And we will ask those people to submit their applications by January 31st. And then in February, we use that time as a committee to review your applications, check references, have conversations with people so that we can start to develop a nominee slate for the board, which we will present to them at the end of February. So those are the next 2 big things coming up. Questions and answers about positions that are available, what the job looks like, and when to submit your applications.
So Jermaine, that's all really great and important information, but can you also share with us why you like being on the committee?
Well, If you guys have spent any time with me, you probably know that I'm kind of a social person. I'm a little bit of a social bunny, and I love to go and speak to my fellow religious educators and get to know them. If we were meeting in person, you'd notice that I actually don't sit at the same table every single time we get together for these meetings, because I purposely put myself in different places to get to know new members or to talk to people I haven't seen sometimes since the last FalCon. So I want to know your stories. I want to get to know you as a person, get to know your strengths, and think of ways that you can develop as a leader in this organization, and for us to be able to help you develop as a leader in this organization. So I love being, I don't know, Julie from the Love Boat. I'm the social director.
Well, thank you. And now we're going to watch a brief video that will tell you a bit more about why you, let me try that again. Tell you a bit more about why you may want to apply to be on the Laredo board and what the 2 open positions entail.
Katie Cartman called me and was casting about for board members. They wanted a Canadian on the board. I was at a place where I wasn't considering it. And then I saw the slate of who was actually going to be on the board. And I went, oh my goodness, I have to get on that board, because this is a board that knows how to move things and shake things and get things done. Oh my God. And so I ran into Katie at GA when it was in Spokane, and I went, oh, I'm so sorry. I said no, because when I saw the slate, I was super excited. And she said, oh, well, Annie's leaving. There's a position coming up, VP. If you're interested, talk with Linnea. So Linnea and I met, and Linnea was really clear with me that because I would be serving longer than 18 months, I could not reapply and take on another term with the board, that I would serve my time and I would be done. Because if you serve under than 18 months, you can run for your own term. And I think you need flexibility in this position, because the VP picks up the pieces of what people are doing. And if they can't handle this, or this is going on too much, the VP steps in, begins to move things forward. And so you need a lot of adaptability and flexibility and a willingness to be curious. And I found this out when the Committee on Mentoring was going through some stuff. And so we had a board member leave. I had to sort of step in and pull the Committee on Mentoring together. And together we figured things out. So it's much more of a collaborative kind of approach to things, as opposed to a top-down approach. And that's another thing I like working about being on this board, is how collaborative we are. We really, if I'm questioning something or I'm not sure what to do, I can just reach out to a member on the board and say, hey, can you help me talk, or I'm having trouble with this, and 2 or 3 people come on board and we work together to solve the issues. And that's, to me, that is, that's what I'm looking for when I'm looking for people to work with. Like, if you want to take your skills and deepen them and embody them in a real way, this is the position and the opportunity for you.
Emmy and I are the newest members of the NomCom, and we're interviewing the older members of the NomCom. Not that you're older than us, but you've been serving longer. So one thing I do want to highlight about the video that we showed right before we broke, our Vice President Samaya was sharing her experience serving on the board and saying some great things about why she serves and what she loves about it. We do have 2 positions that we're recruiting for for the board, and we did want to highlight one thing that Samaya said, which is that according to the Laredo bylaws, when a person fills a vacancy in the middle of a term, if they've served for less than 18 months, they are eligible to apply and be considered for a full term in the position. So we do have 2 board openings, and we just want to, in the interest of full transparency, we do want to say that the person with the portfolio of leadership development, who's Kirsten Hunter, has served for less than 18 months. And to the best of our understanding, we do think she's planning to apply for the full term. So we just want to let people know that, so, so that you're aware of the situation and the lay of the land, as it were. So, Emmy, I think you're next.
And even though I am megaphone mom, I cannot overcome muting myself. Okay, so what I was saying before you could hear me was, I understand that applications are due for open positions will go out in December. But what can people do right now if they're interested in a position or know someone they think would be excellent in a position?
I am
Sam?
so glad you asked. So we are currently looking to fill those board and committee positions that we talked about, but we are always looking for new interested leaders and people who want to serve in any capacity. And we have 2 great ways of doing so. So if you're watching this and want us to know that you might be up for some role at some point, go to tinyurl.com/I'm awesome Loretta and tell us how awesome you are. Or if you have a colleague you think would be great, please go to tinyurl.com. They're awesome, Loretta, and tell us about how awesome they are. So please consider filling one of these out at some point this week so that we can find awesome people to do all the awesome things. And I think
Sorry,
those
I did
links
the
are in the
same
chat now.
unmute. Okay, that's great. Thanks for all that information. And Jermaine, if I'm a Laredo member and I still have questions or I'm confused about all of this stuff we just presented, what should I do?
Well, the easiest thing you can do is join us tonight between 5:30 and 6 o'clock. We have a separate Zoom channel, and you can ask us any questions that you have about the positions that are available. You also could send a private email to our tinyurl email address, or you can just send it to nominating@laredo.org.
Alrighty, so now for our last few minutes here, we are actually all going to play a little getting to know you game that some of you may have played with us the other night at our games tonight, but most of you are at least probably familiar with the in-person version called I Love All My Friends and Neighbors, because we love you, we love all of you, and we want to get to know you a bit better. So now the Zoom version does potentially still involve some running around, so consider this optional and feel free to actually move around as much or as little as you want. But okay, so the way this works is I'm going to start by saying, I love all my friends and neighbors who, then I'm going to say something about myself. And if that's true for you too, I'm going to tell you to do something. And then it's a race to see who can do that thing and come back first. So if it's true for you too, and you don't want to do the thing, you can also just exclaim your fingers, all right? So here we're gonna try this out. I love all my friends and neighbors who have chalice tattoos. Now go splash some water on your face. So if you have a chalice tattoo and you wanna go splash some water on your face, or you can do your exclaim fingers. And it'll be erased. So with this many people, it's a bit hard to see.
I don't have a chalice tattoo, but I like splashing water on my face because we took the air conditioners out of my house and I am sweating, y'all. So.
Oh.
All right, Jessica may be our winner. It's a little hard to tell with 200 people. But yeah, thank you. Now we're gonna do, Emmy, do you wanna do one?
Sure. I love my friends and neighbors to have blue lips today. Now go spin in your chair.
My chair doesn't spin.
Okay, stand up and spin in place. And I can't see who all is there because I just can't. Gallery.
It is hard to play this game with that many people. I saw Sophia spinning first. Sophia Betancourt. That's who I saw first.
Awesome.
I don't know.
Okay.
Okay.
Sophia's the winner.
I love all my friends and neighbors who are simultaneously in this meeting and supervising your kids in online school. Now go lay eyes on those little cuties and then come back.
Mine's right here.
She's a teenager. She won't let me in her room.
Hi, Lily.
Mine was easy. They were on a lunch break, but
Mine stole my snack, so
not
it was
cool.
technically her
Rude.
snack, but she left it on the table, so that's free reign. That's free game.
Mine's right here.
I think Emily and Regina win because they brought little cuties right into the picture. So hello, sweet ones. I'm trying to scroll through and see if anyone else did. So you can see we have so much fun in our committee work.
And the last little bit of love is I love all my friends and neighbors who have already filled out the awesomeness inventory or the bag sheet about themselves or their colleagues. So if you've done that, or if you want to do that, go get yourself a snack. And like I said, my team just took my doggone snack, so I gotta go find something.
So what that also means is if you aren't getting a snack or doing this with your fingers right now, guess what that means? We're looking at you. So while they're doing that, if you can, please click on one of these links right now.
I got the turkey jerky, I'm good.
But yeah, so if you didn't go get a snack or weren't eligible to, please click on one of these links so that you can be sure to fill one of them out later. We really would appreciate it. Thank you so much.
So thanks for listening to us. Thanks for playing with us. That's about it for the four of us on the nominating committee. And we hope you'll stick around for the next part of the excellent programming. Thanks for your time.
And if you have any questions, please join us for the question and answer session on the tiny URL link there later.
Yeah,
Thank
we'll
you
talk
all.
about those 5 open positions that are coming up for June. Thank you.
Okay, everyone, let's take a breath together because we're shifting gears, moving back into our programming for this afternoon. We're very pleased to welcome back the commissioners for their final session with us, Reverend Leslie Takahashi, Reverend Dr. Natalie Fenimore, and Elias Ortega. And I heard a rumor that it is Reverend Leslie Takahashi's birthday today.
Happy birthday! Happy birthday! Okay.
Happy birthday!
Thank you all. Nice to be with. What a great group to be with on a birthday.
Happy birthday, Leslie.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Marcus. All right. So we are glad to be back with you. And I appreciated the nominating committee's report because I got to go eat birthday pizza. So now I'm all like ready to be here. And it's good to have Marcus with us. I want to introduce Marcus Fogliano, who served as our amazing project manager for the Commission on Institutional Change, and who they now have a new position, and the title of which I realized this morning, Marcus, I'm not completely, I'm really sure of. So why don't you tell them what it is?
I'm the project manager to the Office of the President of the Unitarian Universalist Association.
Yes. And one of the projects that Marcus will be managing with their amazing skills will be the implementation of the Commission's reports. And so we're really grateful that Marcus is here, and Marcus is going to be sharing some information for us as we go through this time. So we'll be jumping in. Okay, so we're going to start off today with Dr. Elias.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be with you together for this final session. And this final session focuses on the areas of the report that talks about innovation and living our values. And I think for us at this particular juncture of our time together, it's really important to start thinking a bit more closely on the ways in which our report considered religious professionals, right, as central to this particular work. And we would like to kind of briefly highlight some of the takeaways in this area. And for us, right, it was important to really bring to the fore that we propose that religious professionals of color are really essential to the work for our movement to move into more equity and inclusion, but also to help reshape Unitarian Universalism, right, in the shape of equity, compassion, and justice. In this work, we also realize the centrality of living into team ministry among our professionals as a way to provide new models of how to be in community and do our work. We understand this to mean that we have to kind of really reanalyze and analyze again the ways in which our communities center the leadership of some of our religious professionals, but do not take into consideration oftentimes or affirm, right, the wisdom that is gained when we work more collaboratively, right? So finding ways of proposing what does that look like, not as a new experimentation, but as being central, right, to the work that we do, and how do we create change in community. It is really important. We also propose as a takeaway that it is really important for us to affirm that the quality of our lives, right? That our work oftentimes, or far too often, right, we sacrifice health, we sacrifice health emotionally, mentally, physical bodies in doing some of this work. So how do we create the conditions, right, the structural conditions and the congregational conditions for that not to be the case, but also affirm the ways in which, right, we live. And I think this particular moment is a moment for us to really analyze the ways in which our current COVID-19 situation really have a differential impact across our communities, right? Of course, we are all impacted by this reality, but there's a particular kind of tension and stress for communities that are at risk and communities that are marginalized, that also serve as religious professionals and leader in our movements, that we need to be aware of, right? How do we allow ourselves, right, and those who are our peers to at times step up, right, but also move back as needed, right? And I think that is something important for us to consider as we affirm, right, the centrality of the work that we're trying to do, and how do we create a more equitable space for us. We also think that it's important for our movement to really gain, and not only gain a more consciousness, but we'll take affirmative actions into addressing the ways in which religious professionals, particularly those of us who are lay and who are from marginalized groups, oftentimes experience aggression, right, within our leadership structures, right? We are ways in which we are oftentimes demeaned and put to a side or undermined, right, in our work, at the same time that our ideas, proposals, and ways of operating get embraced to make change. So we need to figure out a way to do that. And finally, the last takeaway that we thought for us to put forward is to understand that as religious professionals, right, and particularly those of us who are educators, we need to be we need to be ongoingly proactive on the ways in which we advance our own understanding of our profession. All right, so as we engage in next steps, the conversation that we will be moving into is to talk about reparations and accountability. Right? As part of this work, we thought that it was really important for us to understand that it is not solely necessary to move into our current space and the moment in which we are with new ideas, but also understand that there's harm that has been done in the past that need to be engaged and need to be repaired. And as part of this work, right, for us was important then to underscore the ways in which we can analyze and understand what an equitable faith community could look like. And these are 5 ways in which we thought this can be achieved, right? First, to find ways to affirm our full humanity, right? And that means understanding that there's different opportunities, not only in how we enter into our spaces of worship, but also in the kinds of leadership that we may bring, and also understand the ways in which we can create multiple paths towards professionalization, right, and development in our work. Second, find ways in which our spaces of worship, right, and the places that where we work may not be accessible, right, to members of our community, whether we're talking about gender neutral bathrooms or whether we're talking about accessibility of how do we move right into a particular space. We need to be aware of some of those barriers that we build in our spaces of work and worship if we are really moving into being an equitable community. Third, finding ways that are transparent into how do we move into leadership. That is to say, creating processes, right, that are clear of what are the steps that we can take as individuals and as a faith community to develop the next generation of leadership. Oftentimes in our system, this happens really informally, right, without very clear mentoring or at times based on favoritism, but there's not a clarity of what are the ways in which we can create processes that we develop our lay leaders and open paths of development for others in our midst. Fourth, really recognize that we need to make the commitment towards liberation is ongoing, right? The work of anti-oppression and right relationship and entering restorative justice is not one and done, right? This will take many iterations, right, to get it right. And it may not be possible to get it right, but move the needle forward. And I think if we really take into consideration kind of the life cycle of congregations and institutions, we know that members will leave and new members will come out. In other words, there's growth and there's also shrinkage. So we need to have a process in which we ongoingly, right, assess and develop, right, the capacities of how are we not only in right relationship, but in what ways that we continue and put forward healthy systems and also maintain the health in our systems. And finally, really find ways to embrace multi-generational and intergenerational opportunities of worship, right? I think we did spoke about that yesterday at some length, but how do we prioritize, right, co-creating spaces that are inclusive of multiple generations instead of spaces in which we add one element to affirm, right, a particular group for part of our time together. And in some of the ways, what we propose for us to really consider as we engage institutional change is this. These are 4 points that we can kind of lift up very quickly. First, we think that it is important to begin with a clear articulation, right, of what our issues is. In our report, you will find over 30 recommendations, right, that our congregations and movement can take in order to move into equity. In addition to these recommendations, there are at least 90 specific actions that congregations and us as religious professionals can start implementing, right, to engage this work. And again, we understand that these are in some ways timely, but also in some ways they could be dated depending on the context and the time. So these are not to be the only things that we can do. There are other things that we can also engage, but this is as a way, right, to help us move forward. And finally, we also thought that it was important to for us as a movement at this time to really think on the strategic ways, right, and we can focus our resources in these changing times. And that is to say, can we think of the ways in which we live into community and in covenants that are creative and new, and not the ways in which we have always done things. restoration and reparation. It is fair to say that in our the movement of the history of harm in our movement is decades long, right? If not at least over a century long. So the harm that has been perpetrated in our history, it may be impossible for us to really move into full restoration and full repair, but that ought not to prevent us from engaging in the work that we can do. It is important for us to really understand that harm that has been perpetrated in the past has left particular wounds and scar in our movement today, right? In who we could have been at this particular point. And for us, then it is central to find ways that we did not only recreate those harms in new ways, but also be very mindful, right, of ways in which we can perpetuate new harm. In our takeaways, you will find many ways that we talk about this particular process, and we offer historical insights, but more importantly, we offer particular actions that can be taken. And among these actions for us is central to find and to be very mindful of the ways in which power move in our systems. And of course, power is wielded by folks, by persons and by systems, right? There's ways that power works within a particular system that is designed to have a particular outcome, but it also the reality that particular actors wield power in particular ways. And for us to be mindful, right, of the kind of harm that we can create in those kinds of relationship. And I think I'm sure that if we were to ask the question, how have you experienced to be impacted by power in our system, we can come with a generous and long list of how we have been impacted by misuse and mishandling of power because of the system, right, for individuals. And the reality is, I think that we're honest, right? Each one of us carry some of the wounds, right, and some of the scars of some of these happenings. So how do we move then into repair, right, with energy and innovation, but also create the systems of knowing, right, and being and sensing that are not solely tied to the European legacy, but to help us move in new ways. Here are four ways that we propose this could be done, right? First, asking the UUA to not only research, but invest in a platform to talk about reparations at a local, at a national, continental way. And for us, this is not going to be a one-size-fits-all, but it needs to have multiple iteration in different settings, depending on the particular history of our sites. We also thought that prioritizing the voices of religious professionals of color and those who are most impacted by this legacy need to inform how this work continues. We also thought that it is central for us to cultivate the value of repair within our theology as a moral imperative, right? That is to say, this is not an action that gets tagged on to our social justice work, but instead is integral to the way in which our spiritual lives are shaped. That is to say, how do we create the particular rituals, right, the particular worship events and resources to understand that repair work and restorative work are theological and spiritual disciplines that we need to embrace as a faith community, and not something that is handled just by one committee as a social action event. And finally, right, we need to really be mindful, right, and hold our leaders accountable, right, to the kind of institutional work required of us to move into these restorative practices.
Thank you, Elias. Are you saying tag I'm it? So we're going to continue. We'll go on to the next. Just to, and I want to just invite us to take a breath. It is Friday. You all have been amazing about being attentive. It's amazing that there are still almost 200 of us in this room. Just with everything that you're juggling, we're really appreciative of that. And we want to continue this conversation. Some of these two sections on restoration and reparation and on accountability are some of the ones that I think people in our congregations and communities are going to struggle with the most, and they're some of the most important. So I'm just going to invite us all to take a breath and continue on here, because it's important for us to think about this. And while the recommendations in this section are particularly geared often at the national level, as Elias said, there are implications for us at the local level, of course, and many ways that when we start to have these conversations, we learn about things that we didn't know were happening. So I'm going to, if we move forward just one more, great. It's important for us to know that we are continuing to ask that there be a prioritization of funding to allow those that have been harmed, and Black, Indigenous, people of color, and other marginalized individuals to attend and convene opportunities where they can be with others who have been who have experienced what they have also experienced within the larger frame of our faith. And I was having a conversation with Mark Hicks this morning, and he said that we were talking about the new Beloved Conversations online. And one of the things that they're discovering through that is the, again, something we all know, but the incredible painful isolation, just taking, again, that axis of race. There are other axes that we could take easily, but taking that axis of race, how isolating it is for people to be the only one in their congregation, how painful it is, and how often they are asked to hold up the whole body of the work on addressing these issues in our congregation. So it's really important that people have the chance to get the life-saving, spirit-renewing opportunities to reconnect with others, and to also, it's also important that we truly up our skills on productive conflict. And we recognize that, as we talked about a little bit yesterday, tapping down conflict isn't our goal, but being able to put it into productive channels is. We also need procedures at all levels for identifying harm, making amends, and financial reparations where appropriate. And looking at different models, a number of our congregations, and we profile a couple in the report, have been very proactive in doing this. So it's an important thing. And it's important as we build our body of people who are willing to have these explorations and these conversations to acknowledge Unitarian Universalism's just base level foundational complicity with racist practices, especially against Indigenous and Black people. And because that's really essential to understanding the direction we need to go, the further education we need to do. So that's important as well. So the area of accountability and resources, we know that we need accountability structures at the national level, and a number of our recommendations are tied to that. We also know that we are not going to, as an association, easily come out of the fact that we chose for a number of years not to do anti-oppression work, and we missed the continuity of that. So there are generations of Unitarian Universalists that were not exposed to any kind of tools for unpacking, understanding, and addressing and making redress for these inequities. So as a result, we want to say strongly, and this is one of our strongest messages that we started saying from almost the moment we were appointed, we believe that we cannot again afford as an association to drop this ball again. And that's been kind of our history, which is to do some work on this issue, then we lose interest. It's no longer the bright, shiny object. And then we go on to something else, and then we come back. And this needs to be a steady commitment. We can't afford to abandon it again because of its larger significance in the way that the world is changing with the trends that we talked about yesterday. Work to counter oppressive practice in our systems needs to be embedded at all levels of the UUA, including at the congregational and community levels. And it just needs to be what we do. Why would we in this day and age have a membership committee that doesn't have basic skills in this area? Why would we have a board of directors? Why would we have a nominating committee? So we were just preceded by that really fun, presentation from the nominating committee. So, these are critical gatekeepers in our systems, and they need to be educated around this. And we need regular reporting of our progress to keep us focused and on track. Now, our recommendations we've been specifically putting pressure on the at the national level to make sure that we are seeing certain indicators, that we're actually tracking, for example, the number of religious professionals of color. We can actually go to the UUA and say, how many religious educators do we have, professional religious educators, that identify as being Black, Indigenous, or people of color? That is not a question we can easily answer right now. And even after we actually dedicated a special consulting project to it, we still can't really educate. We can't really answer that as well. And we also we can answer that one better than the other question, which is also important, which is to watch what happens on the professional tracks of people that carry these marginalized identities, because we know their journey is often not the same as others. So it's really important for us to do that at the local level, at the congregational or community level. If we are seeing a pattern with our visitors who come in, our visitors who are Black, Indigenous, people of color, or another group that might be marginalized among us in many of our congregations. So it might be BGLTQ, or it might be young adults. And if we're seeing that they consistently don't make it through the bells and whistles of our membership processes, what does that tell us about how we're doing those processes? There's lots of ways we need to report and track so that we can actually make this an actual long-term commitment. And all who facilitate conversations during times of conflict should be trained on anti-oppression and how to address systemic bias. Too often when there is a conflict that involves a religious professional, the systems, the ingrained oppression within the system perpetuates that and makes the outcome incredibly destructive, especially for the individual, but often for the congregation, and especially for those within that congregation or community that share that identity, which it becomes an incredibly painful process for everyone involved. So these are all important accountability issues that we need to look at. It also needs to be embedded in the structures at the national level and affiliated and professional organizations. And Natalie, I think, will speak a little bit about the characteristics that we came up with during the Happy Valley gathering, about what would be accountable and inclusive, diverse, equitable professional organizations. Ongoing monitoring is needed to ensure that the work to counter bias and oppression isn't interrupted, as I said. And what does that mean? It means we're all in this pandemic time, which also is an economic crisis time. So it isn't the time you're probably going to be adding a lot of line items to your budget. But when you do add line items to your budget, where's that line that continues to support this work? And how do we advocate that as part of the necessary religious education that's happening at every congregation? We need to have and then there's a call for an ongoing independent body nationally, which will continue within the UUA structure, that will continue to offer opportunities to continue to monitor and give feedback and develop new areas, because this is always an ever evolving, ever moving target. And those responsible for negotiating in times of change and conflict should have training in anti-oppression work. And guess what? We're in times of change and conflict. So that's all of us. So that is also something that we need as well. So again, a lot of stuff. So I'm going to invite you to take a moment with our friend, the feelings wheel. One of the things that I think has hindered us as Unitarian Universalists is that we too often try to make this all just a big intellectual conversation. We think that it's okay to debate things that are about people's hearts and spirits and their brokenheartedness, their broken spiritedness. We have intellectual debates about that coming often from members in the dominant culture. That is really traumatizing for people. So it's important as part of this that we all become a little bit better at our emotional resiliency, our emotional conversational abilities, and that we really become able to think about how we're feeling about this. So this is our ongoing conversation that we've been having over these days about some very difficult and long-term issues that are going to require heart and spirit, that are going to require commitment and integrity. And so I think it's an important thing for us to just take a moment and look at this feelings wheel and just take a moment identifying the feeling family that's most present for you right now. You may be feeling, particularly the families are in the middle of the feelings wheel, by the way, in case you don't know that. And so they're the most elemental. They're like the prime numbers of feelings. And so I think this is really a helpful tool in a UU setting, because so often when you ask UUs in small groups, or my experience has been when I ask UUs in small groups to name a feeling, they'll say, well, I'm feeling interested. Interested is not a feeling. Thoughtful is a feeling because it's part of being peaceful, but interested is a way of kind of, shuffling off the feelings spectrum there, off the feelings grid. So, I think the ones in the farthest ring are the ones that often people have more, more facility with. And it's like, for example, I think it's important to think about the fact that people who are feeling sleepy may actually be experiencing a form of sadness. And so I think that it's an important piece. So I'm seeing comments from people that they've never seen this tool and they don't know how to use it. And what I will say is I wanted to specifically bring this because it's one of the tools that are found in the study guide, which we'll talk about at the end of our session today, the study guide for the Widening the Circle report. But the way you would use it is just find the word that most matches the way you're feeling right now. And then journey inside. Like, you may just be able to say, I'm feeling really mad right now. I'm feeling really mad that, that we're still having to talk about this, or I'm feeling really mad that we are talking about this. And, but wherever but you may not actually be that close. You may say, you may be more in touch with the fact that you're feeling hostile. Like, I'm hostile towards this person that's making me talk about stuff I really don't want to talk about on Friday afternoon, right? But then you can trace it back into the center and see that hostile is a form of mad, et cetera. And sometimes we see this often in UU culture in the form of sarcasm or irritation. And right now, with the times we're in and the worry about the next few weeks in our nation, a lot of people are sitting in this little red part of the feelings wheel. And it is so this is a really important thing. And I'm seeing some comments about the wheel, and I think that they're really interesting as well. And it's just a way to kind of get us to, I find this helpful. I know there are different versions of it, and I find it helpful though to deal with people who cannot do this work without getting out of their head. Because when we just make an intellectual debate about my life, or about the life of someone else that has experienced marginalization, that is really something that will commit a deep offense. So I think it's an important thing to be able to do. So just take a moment, and I'm even going to invite us to just, if you haven't done this yet, just to quiet the chat for a moment and just figure out where you are, and just figure out what emotion you are carrying most out of this as you think about yourself moving forward is in the area of being a change agent. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Natalie.
Okay. I think we have slides on the change agent. Not sure it's where we want to be. Okay, there we go. I've heard a lot about the idea about what we can do or not do, and I want to start off with a reading from Dorothy Day, the Catholic social justice advocate and saint. People say there is no sense in our small effort. They cannot see that we must lay down one brick at a time, take one step at a time. A pebble cast into a pond causes ripples that spread in all directions. Each one of our thoughts, words, and deeds is like that. No one has a right to sit down and feel helpless. There's too much work to do. Dorothy Day was a challenging and irritating person. She didn't want to be thought of as a saint because she thought that got in the way of people realizing how irritating she was. She wanted to irritate people. She wanted to point out what they were not doing well. Now, she paid a price for that. And she made some particular choices, which we may not be able to make. She chose to live in abject poverty, and she chose to work for herself. We may not be able to do either of those things. But I do think that what she asked us to do is to do what we can do and to recognize the power in our individual actions. I think it's often the case that what I hear from my religious educator ear and my ordained clergy ear is this: I don't have all the power. And because I don't have all the power, I can't get anything done. Now, as we talked about, we're congregationalists. We're not a top-down authoritarian faith. So none of us will actually have all the power, nor should we, in my opinion. But we do have power where we are, and we are called to use that power where we are. And we're called to work to make change in alliances so that we can have more power in order to make the change that we want. If the power of the ordained clergy and the power of the religious educator and the music director and the membership director are together in your congregation, that's more power. If the power is then in the board and the lay people all join together to make that change, there's more power. So the role of the religious educator could be setting an example of how to move forward. And how to move forward can be modeled by our particular institutions that we have the ability to change. So Loretta has a particular ability to be an equitable affiliated organization, equitable Unitarian Universalist organization. We can understand what it takes to do that and then move it into the system and to work with other organizations to do that and to understand how we can do that then in our congregations and then in our association. So I think the most important thing to do to be a change agent is to commit to, if nothing else, you will no longer gaslight another religious professional. You will witness and affirm whatever racism or discrimination they are experiencing. And starting from there, you can then build an equitable and just relationship with that person. And you can call Loretta into account to do that as well. So I think that when we understand ourselves to be potential change agents, to understand, to take a time to really think about where our own power is, where our position of power is in the system in which we're in, how we are going to be honest and equitable about what is happening around us, then we can move into accountable relationships. But I do think, and I've seen back and forth in the chat and back and forth in many conversations, that we do have to become comfortable talking about power and talking about our differences. We do have to be faithful to our theology about that. We do have to understand that we are all potentially harmed by the processes in which we all are professionalized in Unitarian Universalism. That our credentialing processes can exist in harmful situations for us. We can't make an assumption that religious educators and ordained clergy are not both harmed, potentially harmed in our process. And so we should work together to undo that harm, but we must be honest about how we can begin in positions where we believe we are adversarial when we really are not. We are just perhaps responding to the harm of the process of ordination or credentialing in different ways. So we have to understand our ability to collaborate is there. We need to reflect on how power sometimes makes it hard for us to see our ability to collaborate. And our ability to be accountable is there. And we sometimes can't see that because the power dynamics make it hard for us to do that. But we can't go forward without that understanding, without taking that time and that risk to explore where we are around these issues of power and accountability and collaboration. That our ability to be change agents is greater than we think. I think especially we often don't spend enough time recognizing the change agent potential in religious educators because of the populations that we touch in Unitarian Universalism. I think we have a disproportionate ability to be a change agent, disproportionate ability to move this system. However, we also have to recognize that we may not get a lot of cheering about that because it's happening perhaps in the RE space where a lot of people are not seeing it. So I think we are called to lift each other up and support each other in recognizing what great jobs we're doing and how much potential we have. So the top characteristics of equitable affiliate organizations is intersectionality and relational. Adaptive, accountable, collaborative, both within and between the organizations. Institutional and sustainable. Sustainability is very important and very hard to, I found it to be very hard to get to, sustainability. Faithful, rooted in our theology, and the affiliate organizations and this equitable relationship have to actually exist. It can't be just what we are imagining is existing. We really have to make it real. Okay. Is there a next slide or is that you, Leslie?
It's me, Natalie. Thank
That's
you. Yeah, but I'm actually, yeah, if we could take this slide down just for a second. I just want to thank you, Jolanda. I really appreciate that. I did want to say one thing about before we go into the small groups, because we really do want to give you some chance to kind of think about taking this whole thing home. I've been looking at the chat for the last couple of days as we've been gathering, and I do want to acknowledge that we talked about the importance of keeping the focus on these issues, even though we're in pandemic times and these crisis times, and that is important. And we're in pandemic times and crisis times. And one of the ways that that manifests itself is that we can think a lot about the economics of what we're doing and the choices that we make around those economics, because we're all in settings where people are having to make choices. And I want to say one of the things that has been the most disturbing to me as a religious professional in our family of religious professionals is the number of congregations that have chosen to retain a minister, and I'm a minister, that's what I do, but retain a minister at the cost of religious educators or music staff or some other form of staff. And so I want to acknowledge that that is in the room. And I want us to also think about the fact that if we look at the demographics of our religious professionals, that we know that many of our marginalized religious professionals of all across all kinds of axes, including, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, tend to be newer in their jobs because this has been a change, younger, and often part-time. And when we start to do cuts, who we look at getting rid of often, firing often, or letting go, or riffing, or whatever you want to say, first are those folks that are part-time or newer or in those positions. So we are in very, very difficult times, and congregations will face increasingly congregations in all of our UU institutions. I'm looking at my dear friend Elias here too, all of our institutions. And I know Sophia Bentincourt, who's acting president of Star King, is somewhere on that screen. We all face these very difficult decisions, but I think it's really important for us to be having dialogues in our congregations about how we're making those decisions. And you know, I'm in a congregation where we're fighting hard to say that we need all of our religious professionals, even if it means that our ministry positions, for example, might not be in UUA salary scale anymore. That may be the cost that we have to take in order to get to a place where we can maintain and sustain people during this pandemic time and this economic crisis, which it's clear to us is not going away in just another month or two. So I do want to say that because I know that's live in the room, and I want to add that into the mix about accountability because it's an accountability issue. With that, and with Jolanda's amazing assistance, we're going to go back to our slide because we are going to send you into small groups once again. And I will, we've got hopefully we can, we'll copy these questions and we'll put them into the chat. But we really want these small groups to be focused on what of all this stuff we have talked about over these hours in these days, are you going to actually take home and make real? Because that's really the point of this. And I was part of the administration of the first African-American president in the North Carolina Community College system, which is a 58 campus system. And we did a report about reform, and my boss said, Dr. Lloyd Hackley said, what you want with a report is to have it not be a pine rider. That means you don't want it to just sit on the darn shelf and never go anywhere. So we've been pretty clear with the commission that we do not intend this to be a pine rider. So you're going to help us not make this not a pine rider with these questions. One way that I will model lifelong learning towards diversity, equity, and inclusion. One way I will invite those I serve into this journey. One action I will take to ensure I have support to keep me engaged and courageous. And those questions are what we're asking you to take into your small group. And our times are a little off, but I think that we will stay in these small groups for 25 minutes. Okay, so we're going to talk just a little bit about resources, and we don't have that much time. We may get a question or two, general question or two in, but we want to make sure that you know where to go when you have questions after this, since our terms are up and we are riding into the sunset, right? You have that sunset behind you, Elias. Is that right? Okay. So we're going to do that. And then I'm hoping we can get Marisol, I know. Just do. I was waiting. I was waiting to be corrected. Did you hear me, Mari? I was waiting.
Yes.
It's horrible. It's like a problem. Anyway, it's my biracial, I don't know, yeah, it's terrible. So yes, there we go. Great. So,
oh, good. Thank you. I was just about to show.
Yes. So we have these resources that we want you to know about. And one of them is Marcus. So Marcus can wave, they can wave, and we can, Marcus truly is one of the, a great treasure, as all of us who worked on the commission and with the commission recognized. And we're so glad that Marcus will be continuing to work with this work and the implementation. And we also want to talk a little bit about the study guide. Tamadi, would you do that?
Gladly. So we are very excited about this this new study action guide. We're trying to say study action every time, study/action, because it's truly not just a it's not a book discussion group. It's, it's not like some discussion questions like you would see like for a common read, for example. But you can go on that link and thank you, Marcus. There is a form to fill out, and then we will send you the link for the guide. And the reason we're doing that is because we're trying to see who's interested and who's engaging with it. So it's just for our information. And also if you share your email, as we work on more resources that are, in keeping with the recommendations of the commission, then we can update folks who want to opt in to get a heads up that, hey, this new anti-racism resource is up, and that those will be happening in the years to come for sure. And so I want to say that there is a session for each section or chapter of the Widening the Circle book. You're seeing the page that you go to in the shared screen that you go to when you click on the link, uua.org/widening. And we're recommending that this is approached as, and of course my dog is barking like crazy. Hold on.
You're not going to show us your dog?
Dogs have a sixth sense when you're presenting.
Yeah. So we are recommending that folks get like a task force together. So it's not just, the 11 sessions and then you're done. It's let's study this thing so that we can make real plans to then move forward and implement the recommendations. So we're recommending folks understand that from the get-go. So there's some information that is really helpful to read before your congregation decides to jump into this. I really think that it's a great, concise, very, very helpful entrance point to the report. It's if your congregation wants to at all take this seriously and do something to be part of the cultural change that we're trying to see within our Association of Congregations, then I think this study action guide is the easiest way to go. So the committee should have an understanding of anti-racism. Like we were saying before, like Leslie was saying, you want to pick folks that have some sense of anti-racism analysis. And oh, go ahead.
Well, let me just mention that there are really a couple ways that you can use the report and the study guide, I think. And one way would be to have a group that goes through it as a group, in which case you could have some mixed levels of understanding and analysis potentially too. But the other way would be to assign different chapters to those bodies in your organization that have responsibility for those. For example, hospitality going to membership, so we're going to do both in our congregation. That's why I was just going to illustrate that, Maria, that we're going to do both. So we're going to have a group that goes through the whole thing, and then we're going to give different parts administratively to people and say, you are responsible for doing this and implementing it.
Yeah, definitely. I see the task force, or however you decide to organize the group that's going to go through it at your church, as like an ongoing, after completing the 11 sessions, as like an ongoing project management team. So they would be in communication with and helping guide and helping facilitate all the different, or just keep track of what the church is doing in different areas. So membership, RE, all the things. So there's that. And so I just want to say it's very much written for a congregation, the congregational setting. or like a local, geographically local community. It can be used by online communities, but it might have some translating, you know, to do to make sense of that. However, that being said, it is designed to be used over Zoom during pandemic times. So there's nothing to translate there. It can be done in person or on Zoom during these times. And then I want to say that coming very, very soon, we're going to have a couple of, is it addenda or addendums? We're having extra sessions that will be up. Both. Okay, thank you. One for clusters, UUMA clusters to utilize together to kind of think through how they might want to engage as a cohort, as you know, local, regional, not regional, but geographically close clusters. And then also we have one coming out for Laredo clusters to think about how you want to engage in it together and what projects you might want to take on together. So be on the lookout. And if you sign up to receive the link, then you'll also be getting the addenda when it shows up. We're just finishing up some little touches on those. And oh, and also add your congregation to the little map. We're putting little virtual pins on the map to kind of chart how far this goes and see how many congregations are part of, you know, who are electing to be part of this really joyful, exciting, you know, soul enriching work. So it's hard work, but it's also really joyful.
Yeah. Mari, can I add, it's Natalie, can I add that we found that one way to use this on Long Island is for all of the island to do it together. It does provide more of an opportunity for a larger percentage of people of color to participate. If you do multiple congregations together, if you're in an area where there are a lot of small congregations.
That sounds great. And like I said, you know, throughout the study action guide, it says congregation or community.
Right.
So
Right.
It can be.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think you do have to think through how to bridge some of the difficulties when you have a congregation where the number of people of color or other identities that are not dominant are so low that the conversation just doesn't get to all the places it needs to get.
Yeah.
So having some sort of sense about who is potential to be in a wider group can be helpful, especially since people are, you know, isolated now with Zoom, but at the same time, you can reach more people. We would not have been able to do this in person up and down Long Island, which is actually a very long island. We would not have been able to do it. But we're able to bridge the difference, not have the traffic, not do that. So I think we're getting better participation if you sort of think a little bit outside the box about who you might have partnered with in the past.
Yeah. I'm sure it's a creative way to put a pin on the map for clusters engaging together.
I think, and it's a great way to exercise the polity that Natalie was talking about our very first day together. So that's wonderful. I want to make sure we have time to do two more things, and we got a little bit of a late start. So I want to turn it over to Marcus just to talk a little bit about some of the other resources that are available. And then we have not yet gotten to hear from the voice of the last of the commissioners who finished working on this report, and that's Sir Labert Jr. And so I want to make sure that Sir's voice gets in at the very end. So Marcus, I just want to turn it over to you to talk a little bit about the other resources that are out there.
Absolutely. And just before I do that, there was a question to Madi about the cross-staff component to the question guide. Will that be coming out as well?
Yes, I forgot to include that. There will be that one and the two professional organizations.
Excellent. Thank you. So I'm glad to have an opportunity to be here with all of you. I'm going to share my screen briefly just to kind of give you an update of where the UUA is on the implementation of the Commission on Institutional Changes report. We have established a cross-department team called the CMAT, the COIC Implementation and Mission Alignment Team. This team includes Reverend Dr. Susan Frederick Gray, the president of the association, Carrie McDonald, who is convening this group, the executive vice president of our association, myself as the project manager to the president's office, Janice Marie Johnson from Ministerial Faith Development, as well as Anna Bethay from the MFD and Lifespan Faith Engagement. Lisa Gregory, who is the UUA's new communications, Director of Communications, is a part of this group. Susan Murray from Stewardship and Development, Jessica York, who's with us today from Congregational Life, Hope Johnson from Congregational Life, and we have Ashley Horan from Outreach Strategic Team. I'm pretty sure I just said that wrong. And then Taquina Boston, who is the special advisor to the president, who is leading our justice, equity, and diversity inclusion team, the JEDI team of the UUA. This team is meeting once a week. It's a part of a new leadership structure of the UUA, which has moved away from the Leadership Council, but includes three components, which is the Staff Group Directors Council, an Executive Advisory Group, and the CMAT. The CMAT approach, we're really taking on the Commission's report as lifelong learners ourselves, where we, the UUA staff as a whole, are engaging in reflection and conversation around the recommendations of the Commission's report. We are reviewing the source materials that the Commission has presented, both through video podcasts from CLF, the VIEW episodes, as well as workshops from General Assembly, and we'll probably review these sessions from Loretta as well. So we're really getting engaged in this review and discussion, which leads us into discernment. We are creating these things that are called ministry testimonies. The approach that we're using comes from a tech industry project management process called Scrum that uses extremely ableist language. So we've really reworked the language to be both centered in theology and accountability and ministry, and to remove some of that language. So in that process, you have these ministry testimonies, which are stories of the individual in the future. For example, a individual who's an organizer with the Movement for Black Lives that was really feeling that they were disconnecting from the movement from lack of seeing progress. So the ministry story is that this person was able to re-engage in their movement work because they interacted with a movement chaplain from the local UU church. So from that ministry testimony, the UUA staff sits with that and thinks about what did that UU movement chaplain need to succeed in that ministry, to support that local activist. So we move back from there. What did the congregation need to have that sort of ministry available? What did the UUA staff have to do to support the congregation to have that ministry possible? From that discernment point, we move into our project charters, which we really, at this point, start to have our SMARTY goals, which are time-bound and equitable and inclusive, that are realistic, and that we at the UUA can take on. from the project charters that we're going to be developing around the recommendations from the Commission's report. We will start based on priorities over the 5-year plan that we'll be presenting at General Assembly, start to implement those charters. At the end of the charter, which a project charter has an end, at the end of that charter, there will be either a service or a policy or a program, something that's ongoing that we want to make sure is sustained within the UUA as a whole, and at some point moved out into being sustained within the congregations with support from the UUA. So that is the overall implementation plan for the Commission on Institutional Changes work. And that is the group that I'm currently supporting. The second group that my project management is supporting is the Article 2 Study Commission. The Articles 2 Study Commission is looking at the purpose of the UUA, which includes our principles and sources and the bylaws. So over the next 2 years, we are really hoping to engage you as religious educators in the process of discerning what the purpose of the UUA is and what are our principles and sources. It's all kind of up in the air. The commissioners are still looking over, the Article 2 study commissioners are looking over what needs to be included in Article 2, what might live somewhere else if it lives somewhere else, and what theologically needs to be articulated within Article 2. So as folks that are eligible to be delegates, we ask that you make a commitment now to be a part of General Assembly over the next 3 years, to really be either as a virtual delegate or in person, to be engaged from the beginning and discerning what the covenant is that we have established between our congregations by way of the Unitarian Universalist Association. So that's all I have, unless there were any other questions for me about implementation.
Thank you, Marcus. So we are going to close our time with you. It's been an honor to be in dialogue. There's lots that we can see in the chat that still needs to be continued, reformed, refined. We're seeing the comments. All of those need to be acknowledged and as we move forward. So we will continue to be in dialogue with you. We'll all be doing in our own settings the implementation along with everyone else, because none of this is about any kind of perfection. It's all about a learning journey. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye and invite Elias and Natalie to do so, and then we're going to hear from Sir as the closing to our presentation to you all.
Well, I'll start. I'll say goodbye. I'll say how much I missed seeing the people I usually see at Laredo Fall Conference, and also how much I am grateful for being able to be with the people I usually don't see at Laredo Fall Conference. So thank you all.
Also, Echo, it's a joy to be with all of you, even if it's not face to face. But I'm happy for this opportunity, and I wish you health and hope in this journey. Be well.
My name is Sir LeBear Jr. And first, I would like to extend my gratitude and honor to my fellow commissioners for their valiant and their passionate and educated work, and my gratitude to them for bringing me in to share. As an atheist, I'm sometimes asked what I consider sacred and meaningful about human life. In the Black community, we lift up the wisdom of our ancestors. Directly tied with what makes humans special, quote unquote, is our ability to teach our future across generations using the written word that is fundamental to our ability to survive and thrive. The way we honor them is in the way we live and utilize the values and knowledge they fought so hard to carry to us. For me, the 8 principles of UU have been a wonderful example of the power of written values. The worth and dignity of every human, justice and equity, acceptance, a free and responsible search for meaning, the democratic process, the goal of world community, respect for the interdependence of life, a commitment to actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. These principles serve as our Constitution, the guide by which we grow and the mandate by which we act. Sadly, the nation in which we live, and many times the faith in which we share, fails to match our highest ideals, and the deeply embedded racism by which it operates has poisoned the hearts, minds, and institutions of all within its boundaries, weakening and subverting even our own faith. It is my hope that this report serves as a decisive declaration of Unitarian Universalism's values and intention, and a guide for how we may implement those values within our spaces and all the spaces we inhabit. By directly naming the stumbling block of racism and anti-Blackness and proclaiming how we will confront it, we can ensure our actions live up to the highest ideals of our anti-racist ancestors and lift a banner both to our future members and leaders and to the world, saying clearly, we are a faith for all people.